They're curious as to what the funniest or the wildest story that you have as an accountant is so far.
I had one client. So there was one time where he called me up, picks me up, and he pops me into the car. Him and his girlfriend at the time was sitting as the passenger seat. And then he said to me, we're going to see a lawyer. And I was like, okay, cool. What are we seeing the lawyer about? And then he said to me that it's about the marriage and getting her I think it was a spouse visa, partner visa. And I was like, okay, cool. With who? And he said, with you.
Happy New Year, everyone, even though this is going out in February. Welcome to Accountants After Dark, where we answer the questions that most accountants wouldn't answer during business hours. As always, I'm joined by the most handsome accountant on YouTube, Davie Mach.
Hey guys, it might be super awkward right now because I've been in bed with food poisoning issues, but let's try this out and see how we go this time.
I don't know if you remember, but the first episode we recorded as well, you had food poisoning. So maybe there's some correlation between recording episodes and your bowel movements.
I think it's just because I'm not eating properly, to be honest.
Well, if you're new to us, thanks for joining us today. The purpose of this is for Davie, who's a new age accountant, to answer literally any of the questions that you have. It could be personal, it could be professional, it could be about accounting, it could be about what's going on in the world, it could be about whatever. If you do have any questions for Davie, just leave them in the comment section below and we'll hopefully get to them and hear what old mate over here has to say. Just a quick one from me. If you could just quickly summarize what your personal and professional goals are for the year and how you're going to go about achieving them. I think that'll be a good way to kind of kick off this series for 2024.
Personal goals, I think I would love to start a family soon and look after my health. Mainly looking after my health because starting a family is a lot of work personally. And obviously you don't want to be the unfittest and unhealthiest you are when you have a kid because, you don't want that be passing over to your kid. So that's one thing. And the business goals, because I'm focusing more on my health and family, I think the next step is to pass down the reins to the managers and the newbies to help them upskill themselves and take over more of the business. I probably won't be taking too many more new clients, but my team and newbies that are joining Box are probably going to be taking on the new clients because I just can't handle that much clients anymore.
We had someone write in with a really interesting question. 2023, I think the words that kind of defined the Australian economy were things like interest rates, inflation, cost of living. What do you predict for everyday Australians for 2024? And what are your tips to help them navigate what's to come?
For this year, I think it's already happening. A lot of businesses are starting to struggle a lot and some of them are closing down. And as a result, unemployment rates are probably going to rise and there are going to probably be more layoffs. It's already happening over in the US and it's still happening over the US. So I believe that that's going to come to Australia. Usually Australia is a bit slower. When what gets impacted in the US, you don't see it straight away in Australia. So I think it's going to be more layoffs and unemployment rates going to go up. So as a result of that, that means that the economy is probably going to go down even more. Interest rates, I don't know. I don't really have much of a comment if it's going to go up even more. I won't be surprised if it does, but I also won't be surprised if it stays the way it is right now, partly because it's gone up so much already and I can already see so many people struggling and I think it's done its impact already and it still is impacting a lot of the economy. So what does that mean for others? It means that you're most likely not going to have as much spare cash and most likely will be looking for new roles and you got to be careful with your job. You got to focus more on your work. There's a lot of talk about people coming back to work as well. Remote work is not as accepted by some companies. I think the powers of the employers are coming back to them a bit. So the employers are now starting to ask for more from the employees and because there's not as much jobs around, as many people are looking for employees because the employment rate's gone up, the employers will have more say and more control. And so if they're asking people to come back to work, most likely that would happen because if you don't go back to work, then you're unemployed, then you can't afford to live. Not saying that I would do that though.
So do you find that you have to kind of pre-warn them of the things that are to come? Or do you think the clients are already very well aware that businesses anticipate struggling a bit this year?
You'd be surprised, man. Some clients are oblivious to it or they don't want to know and they don't want to hear it. We actually specifically have to send out obvious emails to them to say, hey, you owe this much money, even though it gets sent to them, even though we send them this on a quarterly basis in terms of their taxes, in terms of who they owe because we do their books. Sometimes need a phone call to go, hey, is anything wrong? there's all this debt that you're owing and we need to do something now before it's too late. Some people would just hide behind their desk or whatever it is and just not want to talk about it. So yeah, it's actually quite hard for us to approach the clients. We've actually had some training internally to set up a process in place to talk to clients. And most of the time, a manager needs, or myself need to speak to the client on a more personal level, just treat them like a human and not just like a business or anything like that. And it's crazy because and I don't want to talk too much about this, but as a business owner, you don't really have many people to talk to, and you could speak to your partner or your friends, but some of this, it's they rely on you heavily to run their business and bring money to the table. So it's hard to kind of bring this up in the conversation, because if you do, then it may affect the relationship. And so therefore they don't really have anyone to go to. And sometimes it's also hard to speak to their accountant. And that's where we have to put our personal cap on, be more personalized with our services and speak to them on a one-to-one level rather, and then treat them like a human.
Yeah. We had a question from one of your listeners who claims that they've been a part of the Davie Mach social media journey from very early on, which is really cool. So thank you for being a part of that. That question, very astutely, they've recognized that this year will be the point where you have been an accountant for more than half of your life. It's pretty wild. They're curious as to what the funniest or the wildest story that you have as an accountant is so far.
Yeah. Well, it's crazy that I've been an accountant for 17 years this year. Insane. And now I'm for turning 34. Far out. Yeah. So bloody insane. But when you mentioned that, there is some funny moment that in my life once. I had one client that was a bit of a shifty guy, made a lot of money. He would call me up always and he would demand things straight away. So there was one time where he called me up and he's like, "Hey man, are you free later today?" And I was like, "Yeah, I'm free later today." He's like, "Oh, good. I need you to come into an urgent meeting in the city and I'll come pick you up and we need to go see a lawyer." And I was like, "Oh shit, is it really that urgent?" And he's like, "Yes, it's urgent." So picks me up and he pops me into the car. Him and his girlfriend at the time was sitting as the passenger seat. And then he said to me, "We're going to see a lawyer." And I was like, "Okay, cool. What are we seeing the lawyer about? Just brief me up so I can help you out." And then he said to me that it's about the marriage and getting her I think it was a spouse visa, partner visa. And I was like, "Okay, cool. No problems." "With who?" And he said, "With you." And I was like, "What do you mean?" And then he said to me, "Look, Davie, I'm not expecting you to say yes right now, but I'm asking you if you could marry this person."
What the heck?
So you can get the visa. And then I was like, no.
What?
And I said, no. I laughed and I said, no way. And then I forget the lady was right in front. And then I said, look, not that I don't want to marry you, but this is weird. Because it was so awkward because the lady was there as well. And I've met her before. And I knew that she was the mistress of my partner. And my partner also had a wife as well. So it was wild. And anyway, I had to go to the meeting anyway because he asked me to go. It was funny because I actually went to see my partner after, and I told her, "I have something to say to you. It's a request from my client and I just want to see what you think about it." And I just smiled. When I smiled, she was like, "You better not tell me that you're trying to marry someone to get paid, all right?" And I was like, "How the freak did you know?" And then she's like, "Something about girls, man. This female intuition." She just pointed it out straight away.
Is there any amount of money that he could have offered you for you to have done it? So if he said, "Davie, I'll give you 200 grand," would you have done it?
There was a big amount, I'm telling you.
Oh, he had an amount.
Yeah, he had an amount. It's illegal. This stuff here shouldn't be done.
I thought he was just asking for a favor. So he had an amount. Can you tell us how much it was?
It was big. I don't know. It was in the 6 digits easily. Wow. And I wouldn't say it's that far off what you were talking about.
Wow.
Let's just say that guy is not my client anymore.
Understandably so.
Yeah. So, and again, sorry, I don't know why I should say that, but that lady was pretty good looking.
Do you think things would have been different if you were single at the time?
Whoa, no, hell no. I would not marry the lady, mate.
I love this question actually. If you had the chance to change one tax law overnight, what would it be and why?
I haven't really put too much thought about this, but I would probably say get rid of negative gearing. And what negative gearing is basically allowing investors to be able to claim a tax deduction, make losses in their property, and then offset their taxes for it. That's a cool thing and it's great for the economy. But however, I think it was great back in the day. It's a legislation that was implemented ages ago. But right now, it's actually impacting the economy negatively. And what I mean by that is that I actually think in the future, it's going to cause significant issues. These these days, the standard of living is going up, property prices are going up. And what negative gearing does is that it allows people in the market already, which is like probably the baby boomers and all the older generation, to keep increasing their wealth and taking the increase in wealth they've got to buy more investments. It's creating a bigger gap. And what that means is the younger generation is going to struggle more because the prices are going higher. And I think indirectly, I think this is a very big assumption, but I think this is impacting the younger generation's way of living. And a lot of people that I speak to right now and my friends and family are starting to think that there's no point trying to raise a kid in this generation right now because we can't afford to live. Like we can't afford to buy properties or invest in a property to bring up our kids. And they're struggling right now. So even if you make 100K a year and when your partner goes on leave, maternity leave, that's not enough for you to look after your family. So I think the reason why that's happening is because the property prices are going way too high, and negative gearing is one of those factors that's increasing property prices. And as a result, it's indirectly impacting the way we're thinking with the next generation. And a lot of people don't think that having kids is a problem. Like if not having kids, it's a choice, right? It's not a big problem. But if more people don't have kids, what's going to happen is the infrastructure is growing so fast. And if we don't have enough people to take care of the infrastructure and the economy, it's going to impact us very significantly. And I think it's going to cause like serious issues like stability of the economy and also like food rations. We've seen it in disadvantaged countries where the next generation is not ready to look after the older generation. And as a result, people are starving. And I think that's going to happen to Australia if we're having these problems. So I think it's indirectly impacting our younger generation. It's funny because like the older generation's like, oh, we've been through war, we've been through all these problems, and we still decided to have kids. But it's so different when we actually do the maths and we look at like our 100K job will not be able to for us to afford paying for a mortgage and looking after a kid. That's completely different from them like making $50,000 a year, but being able to afford a mortgage and be able to put food on the table as well. It's so different these days. So I just think removing negative gearing would have a big impact to property prices. And as a result, it would help encourage kids to start thinking about having kids.
Don't get too much into it because we have a Accountant Explained series, which will be addressing that very question. Ooh. On the economies of starting a family. So stay tuned for that. You know, you were speaking a little bit about the younger generations and their way of thinking. You'll be speaking on a panel very shortly for the Young Chartered Accountants organization. And one of the things in that discussion we were having with the team behind it is the challenges that younger accountants are going to face in 2024 and moving forward. The whole purpose of their organization is to hopefully attract more talent into the industry. For people who aren't really across the accounting industry, what is happening in the accounting world right now? Is it a kind of stable place and are things going as normal, or are you seeing some changes and some shifts and dynamic changes happening in the industry?
Look, this is my personal opinion. I think the accounting industry is dying a bit. And the reason being is because the salaries of accountant in Australia is going up, but not enough for it to attract the graduates to start working in accounting anymore. And the incentives to work in accounting were great back then, but nowadays it's just not as good anymore because the younger generation wants faster growth and creating more impact. And as an accountant, I feel like the impact is not there, and it's harder to get there. You have to always do your time. Another issue is that it's harder to live in Australia. And back then there was a lot of immigrants that would come to Australia hoping to one day stay permanently in Australia, and accounting was a right role for them to do that, a right pathway. However, I think the government's changed its course, and now it's studying accounting might not be able to get you there. And that's the biggest problem. That's why the demand is still high for accountants, but the supply is actually dropping a lot. If I was a young accountant as well, and now that I know so much about like careers and how to make money, it'll be harder for me to go and jump to accounting now. Back then, when I was a high school student, I wouldn't know where to start to, think about starting a business or thinking about ways to make money. So I jumped into accounting because I thought that was a very good step for me to learn about business, learn about money, and learn about finances. Nowadays, you can find that information online. And they've realized that you don't really need an accounting degree, or you don't really need to study as an accountant for like multiple years before you can learn all that stuff. You can do that on YouTube. Why pay a degree that's going to cost you $50,000, $60,000 to up to $80,000 when you can learn all that information on YouTube or online, for free, right? And then why work for a company that's going to pay you minimum wage for the next 2 to 3 years, and then you're making less than another career that you could do that work less hours. And that's the biggest problem, right? It's not attractive enough. The older generation needs to change and figure out what the younger generation also want as well. There are better ways of doing things. And I think we haven't, as a industry, changed enough to attract the younger crowd, and we got to do things different. And I think the first step is we got to revise the way we pay our employees. And then we got to also shorten the amount of education that's really required, because you learn on the job anyway. And there's so many people that I've heard as an accountant that would ask them like, how was the accounting degree, or how was the chartered accounting certificate, like all the studies that they did, was it really that enlightening, or was that like the stuff that you really need to do? And a lot of them told me that they can learn on the job most of that stuff. Yeah.
What about the things that you see changing in the industry from just like a technical and practical point of view? I know the ATO has some new things that they're cracking down on. I just saw that as a headline, but what are some of the things that you're seeing kind of shift and move into the new year?
So I guess like the ATO has a lot more information about your business than what they used to have. Back in the day when I first became an accountant, like 17 years ago, the ATO would not know anything about your business unless you told them. And because you would lodge things on a quarterly basis, or sometimes even annually basis, because you're slow, the ATO would not be able to catch on to your business very fast. So they wouldn't know the issues that your business has, how much tax you owe, and it would take them a year or 2 years for them to kind of like get the information and be able to audit you, or make you comply. These days, because you've got all these new rules and technology in place, like single touch payroll, all that stuff like that, the ATO has so much more information about you, and they have a lot more powers to be able to enforce consequences onto your business to make you do something about it. So back then, they would just charge you penalties, but that would take so long for anything to happen. Nowadays, they can actually tell other businesses that there is a default and that you owe money to the ATO. And as a result, then people will be like, oh, we don't want to give you any credit. We don't actually want to work with you because you owe money to the ATO. So until you fix that, then that's when we will work with you. Also, single touch payroll with payroll. Employees are getting told that the owner or the employer is not doing the right thing by them, and they're finding out straight away, rather than like finding out that their superannuation wasn't paid for a year ago. Everything is like so transparent now.
Before we wrap up, I just want to say thank you to everyone for sending in questions. Like what we covered today, personal questions, professional questions, accounting questions, opinions, whatever you might have, please feel free to send them through. We didn't have too many spicy questions today, but if you do have any spicy ones, they're not off limits either. So let's see what Davie has to say.
Hey, I did mention to all of you guys that I nearly had a second wife.
The last question I'm going to ask you is, I'm very curious to get your opinion on this as an accountant, because I've been having debates about this with some friends recently. Do you think that there are more wheels or doors in the world?
Wheels or doors? What do you mean by that?
Overall, do you think there are more wheels that exist in the world or more doors that exist in the world?
As in like literally wheels?
Literal wheels and doors. I think this is like an interview question that people ask just to see how people think.
Okay.
What would your take on that be?
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out. So wheels, you're talking about any type of wheels,
Any
right?
type of wheels.
Okay, gotcha. All right,
Well,
and then doors.
I think that's the point, right? Because some people just interpret wheels as just like wheels on cars and trucks and buses. Whereas other people think, there's skateboards and rollerblades and toy cars and
That's a very good question, because now that I'm thinking about it, all right, let's just say it is a building, right? We can average out how many doors there will be in a building. Let's just say.
But how big's a building?
Yeah, how big is a building? Well, obviously like a normal sized building, right? And then you got to look at how many wheels there could be in the world, which I think when you think about it, there will be a lot more. There's a lot more things that could have wheels compared to a building.
But then what about like car doors? What about doors on like doll houses?
Damn it, I didn't think about that. Yeah, you're right. So there could be bloody heaps of doors everywhere. Holy crap, man.
Anyway, let us know what you think in the comments. I'm going to let Davie sit here and think about this for as long as it breaks his head over it. And we'll come back next episode with an answer.
Okay.
See you next time.
Sounds good. See ya.